We are live now, Doctor.
Okay, good evening, Vanakkam. On behalf of the TNOA, OTSI and APOTS, the Asia Pacific Ophthalmic Trauma Society, I would like to welcome as the President of the Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association to this wonderful webinar, a very important webinar prior to Diwali. The title of the webinar is Have a Blast, but Don't Make It Your Last. So it's a very, very appropriate because Diwali is coming next week on November 4th, and during Diwali, before and after Diwali as well, we see a lot of cracker injuries related to the eye. As ophthalmologists, we have got a huge responsibility to take care of the patients and also focus on the preventive aspect. And that is the reason why me and Rupesh, Rupesh is the main person who initiated or mooted this idea of having a webinar, a joint webinar like this, to create awareness not only among ophthalmologists but also general practitioners and even among general public about the need to prevent firecracker injuries. Friends, this particular webinar is being sponsored by the Centis Pharma, and I'm very thankful to the Centis Pharma who did this at a very short notice. As you all know, Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association, the theme for this year is Tamil Nadu Smiling and TNOA Shining. And we have been having regular webinars on every first Saturday of every month. We have the Walk the Talk series with the luminaries of the TNOA. And this month, it's going to be, that is my next month, on November 6th, it's going to be RDR, R.D. Ravindran of Aravind Eye Care System. And then we have the second Friday of every month, we have the Tamil Nadu ARC, the TNOA ARC PG Catalyst Masterclass sessions on every subspecialty of ophthalmology. Third week, we have kept it free for various programs like this. And the fourth Sunday, we have the TNOA Connect series, wherein we connect all the major institutions in all the subspecialties of ophthalmology, which is a webinar between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. IST. Apart from that, we have also encouraged peer-reviewed publications from the TNOA members, an initiative called Publish and Prosper. And then we have also for the World Sight Day, number of activities, that is the Tamil Nadu TNOA Ophthalmic Photography Competition, the results of which will come very soon next week. And more in the offing in the future as well, and with all the support of all the members of the TNOA as well as other members as well. And I'm looking forward to a great year 2021-2022 as far as TNOA is concerned. I would also like to thank Rupesh Agarwal for initiating this idea of getting the Asia Pacific Ophthalmic Trauma Society along with the TNOA and the OTSI for this very important webinar. And Rupesh has got brilliant ideas, and you know the amount of work he's doing for all of us, and as far as advocacy of the firecracker injuries are concerned, the eye gates project and so many other things Rupesh is doing. So I request Rupesh, who is Secretary of the APOTS, to give the opening remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan Rajan, sir. And it's my pleasure. I'm from Singapore, and I really have the privilege to collaborate and work with TNOA, particularly Dr. Mohan Rajan, sir, and under his leadership, Asia Pacific Ophthalmic Trauma Society, on behalf of our President, Dr. Natarajan, sir, on behalf of our Chairman Scientific Committee, Dr. Gangadhar Sundar, on behalf of our Treasurer, Professor Caroline Chi. We are very, very thankful to TNOA and OTSI for allowing us to conduct this webinar. So friends, why do we need this webinar? We are ophthalmologists. We are all very well qualified. We all know how to manage trauma. Why do we need that? So I think in one line, simple answer is that we need a revision. We need to revise ourselves. We need to remind ourselves that these injuries are not trivial. These injuries are there with us, and we need to go back to basics. And that's where our speakers or our panelists today will be telling us a little bit about information and waking us up again that we cannot let go. So like we revise our cataract surgery, like we revise our eyelid surgery, we revise everything. Here again, it is a time to go back to basics, understand what firecrackers can do to the eye, how harmful it can be. And that is why this webinar has been aligned just before Deepavali, so that all of us are on the same page. We can't take it lightly, and we make sure that we give it due importance. As good as when I was in Hyderabad LV Prasad, in 2008, I set up a task force for 3 days, and I was there. My parents were unhappy that I am not there on Deepavali at home, and I am just spending time in the hospital. But my dear friends, on those 3 days, we attended 85 cases of firecracker injuries in one institute in India. So you can imagine how bad it can be. I'm sure the number would have come down with more awareness, but we will hear from our friends in next 1.5 hours about what all can happen. Thank you, Dr. Mohan Rajan sir, for allowing us the opportunity and making this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Natarajan sir.
Natarajan, Nati. Nati is there with us. He's the president of the APOTS. He's been the guiding force as far as ocular or ophthalmic trauma is concerned in this part of the world. Nati, 1 or 2 words from you, Nati. Nati, kindly unmute yourself. Okay. Before Natarajan could come online, I would request Sai Krishnan of Numerotech, who's been doing the back end for us completely, and to play the Centis video. It's a 1-minute video. Thank you, Sai. Thank you, Centis. As you know, Centis is one of the vibrant ophthalmic pharma companies, and Nati is, I think, is somewhere else. MO's inauguration. No problem at all. Nati, can you? Yeah, no problem. When, Nati, we can take up Nati later. And before I introduce the panelists for this wonderful session, I would like to welcome our TNOA office bearers. Along with me is our President-elect, Dr. Ramakrishnan, who doesn't require any introduction. And of course, we have the Vice President, Dr. Nirmal Frederick, the immediate past President, Dr. Tangavel, and our Secretary, Dr. Madhavan, and many other TNOA members. Really a vibrant committee, I would say, which is steering the TNOA forward this year, and making literally Tamil Nadu smiling and TNOA shining as well. Friends, before we go on to the speakers, I would like to take this opportunity of introducing the panelists for this session. This panelists, starting from Dr. Rupesh Agarwal. Rupesh Agarwal doesn't require any introduction. He's one of the top guys in Singapore. He's the General Secretary of the APOS as well. He's actually the main guy who's instrumental in all the ophthalmic trauma work, whatever papers, publications, everything. Not only in ophthalmic trauma, he's also a specialist in uveitis, and he's also a specialist in retina, and a wonderful guy, and great organizer as well. And it's a pleasure to have Rupesh. He's got a huge experience as far as the firecracker injuries are concerned. Then we have Dr. Natarajan. Dr. Natarajan, as you know, is the president of the APOTS. Again, it doesn't require any introduction. Very, very close friend of not only the TNOA, me, but also all the guys here. He's a top guy in Bombay, and he's done tremendous work in as far as ophthalmic trauma is concerned. Very especially the pellet injuries. He has done phenomenal work in Kashmir as well. Then, of course, we have Dr. Gangadhar Sundar. Gangadhar Sundar again doesn't require any introduction. He's from NUH. He's a ophthalmic oculoplasty, lid, lacrimal, orbit, oculoplasty, ocular oncology, you name it. Gangadhar Sundar is there everywhere. And, guy who can speak very well, who can operate, good clinician. Very rarely you get a combination of everything. And Gangadhar is there always. He is chairman scientific committee as far as APOTS is concerned. He is the one who is here, is completely taking care of the scientific programs as far as APOTS is concerned. Then we have Dr. Ramakrishnan, who's been the main guy, the person, director of the Aravind Eye Hospital, Tirunelveli. He is the one who's responsible for all the, the pamphlets which have got released. It is courtesy Dr. Ramakrishnan from Aravind Eye Hospital, Tirunelveli, who was instrumental in getting it to me in Tamil and English. And then we made it in other languages as well, Hindi, Telugu, Malayalam, Marathi, and now Rupesh wants it in Malay as well. And we, of course, we have Dr. Venkatesh who will be joining us very shortly. That is at 7:30 he'll be joining us. He's got some other meeting. He's the director of the Aravind Eye Hospital, Pondicherry, and he's also got a huge experience as far as ocular trauma is concerned. Now we go on to the speakers, and I request Dr. Rupesh Agarwal to take over.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan Rajan, sir. It's my pleasure to present to you the speakers for the evening who have been chosen because of their really wonderful and passionate work in the field of ocular trauma. We start with the speaker from Australia, Perth, where there is like right now 9:45 p.m. and she is still with us, who has been pioneering the work in the field of ophthalmic trauma by doing PhD in the field of ophthalmic trauma. She is Miss Annette Hoskin, and she has published many papers on safety of eye related to eye injuries, and particularly she is interested in fireworks related eye injuries. So she will be speaking to us today evening about some of the preventive tips and some of the advocacy work, and she is the global lead for Asia Pacific Ophthalmic Trauma Society as far as preventative aspects of ophthalmic trauma is concerned. Then we have speakers from OTSI, we have speakers from TNOA, we have speakers from APOTS. So for APOTS is represented by Annette, we have Rajiv, who is also the life member for APOTS, and we have Dr. Manoj Khatri, and they are also the members for OTSI. So Rajiv, as we all know, is associated with Shankar Nethralaya for quite some time. He's quite academically involved, and people know him as more of a diabetic retinopathy guy. But I have done a lot of postings with him related to ophthalmic trauma. So he has a very good understanding of ophthalmic trauma and the impact of fireworks on the eye, and probably he'll be enlightening us with his knowledge about that field. Dr. Josephine Christie, haven't met, but she is again a wonderful speaker representing TNOA, and she will be also speaking to us about the preventative aspect, and particularly something which Supreme Court recently passed out a resolution about the banning of the firecracker, which not many people were very happy about it, particularly the commercial industry, and then she will be enlightening us about this topic today. Then we have the Secretary of Ocular Trauma Society of India, Dr. Mehul Shah, who is working in Dahod, Gujarat, and he single-handedly in India has been pioneering the publications and the research in the field of ophthalmic trauma. Has published more paper than anyone else. Probably he is next to Ferencun in publishing. Recently being nominated as the top expert in the world in field of ophthalmic trauma. So really thankful to you, Mehul, for making this happen and for getting OTSI on board. Thank you. Then I have a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Manoj Khatri, and both of us goes back from the undergraduate, from the graduate education in Nagpur, and Manoj has been one of the surgeons, retina surgeons. I think I always rate him as a world top, probably in the top 5, if not the first one, but he's one of the best retina surgeons I have ever seen. And he's going to speak to us about the posterior segment injuries. So he's working in Chennai. He has practiced on his own. He worked with Dr. Mohan Rajan sir. And he has got multiple other things, and you would have heard him in all the complex surgical retina, and he does a lot of live retinal surgery also. So these are the panel of speakers with us, and please feel free to post your questions, and we'll be very happy to answer you. Doctor, over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Rupesh. And we have a 12-minute talk by Annette and a 5-minute panel discussion, and then we go on to the next speaker. Okay.
And then we have to excuse Annette because it will be late for her. Though you can pose your
that's the
questions.
reason why. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Thanks, Annette, for being with us.
My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. I'll just start sharing my screen. I apologize if there's a bit of background noise. All right. So you can see my screen okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah,
The
great.
presentation? Perfect.
Perfect.
All right. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak tonight. And as has already been said, this is a topic that we're all very passionate about in terms of injury prevention and saving sight. So this is just about some of my affiliations, but in particular, I really cherish the opportunity to talk about this topic because I think it's something that we can really make a difference in. So in terms of advocacy and prevention with respect to fireworks, always one of the very first starting points for us is to understand the data. And without this data, we cannot be effective in our prevention strategies. And I know it's already been mentioned about eye gates, but I would particularly applaud all of those of you who've participated with us in helping to collect data for eye gates. And I think many of you are aware, and I'll talk a little bit about the study that was already undertaken. But again, just as the foundation for any prevention strategy, data is really key and critical, and that's what's going to make a big difference in terms of the messages that we want to send. So fireworks are obviously very spectacular, and they form a really important part culturally in many parts of the world, including in particular India, obviously, which is, part of the reason we're coming together today. In Australia, even where I live, we still see, even though ostensibly they are banned for private use, we still see some vision loss in parts of Australia where they have very small windows of opportunity for people to be able to use fireworks. And I'll talk a little bit about the experience in the Netherlands as well, because I think this also helps provide some lessons in terms of prevention. So I mentioned the fireworks study that was done, and this was published earlier this year, and we had a large number of collaborators from India and Nepal. And this was really an excellent collaboration between many parts of APOTS, Ocular Trauma Society of India, and ISOT. And we were successful in publishing this data earlier this year, as I said. And looking at where the data came from, we had collaborators in the Netherlands, Nepal, India, and Argentina. And through that data, we were able to identify some key risk factors. And these were really very similar to what was identified in the past. Going back to what I said at the beginning, without knowing these risk factors and without having this key data, we're not able to then direct our prevention strategies. So we know that children, males, and bystanders in particular are at risk of fireworks-related eye injury. So talking about the prevention aspects of it, and I often show this inverted triangle because I think it's really an important message that we need to continue to go back to. And thinking about the most effective measures that we can take, the gold standard at the very top there, and the most effective thing we can ever do is to eliminate or remove the hazard. The next most effective thing is to provide a substitution with something that's less hazardous. The third thing is to reduce exposure through some kind of engineering controls, policies, and then having administrative controls in place. So changing how we do what we do.
Sorry, are you in-house guest?
Yes. And then the last and least effective, but obviously one of the things that we often refer to is personal protective equipment, or PPE. So keeping in mind, again, that inverted triangle and thinking about specifically with fireworks and how we can help to reduce the burden of vision loss and the injuries that occur. We need to identify measures that we can put in place across the spectrum of these different measures. So thinking again specifically about fireworks, and one of the things that's been really successful in many other countries is to stop the private use of fireworks completely. So in Australia, as an example, in almost all parts of Australia, the private use of fireworks is completely banned, except for, as I said, some small windows of opportunity into two of our territories. We can look at substituting fireworks with alternatives like drones or light shows. We can have better product standards to help ensure that the fireworks that are used are safe. We can have other policies to help support the standards that are introduced by the government and administrative controls around that. And then the last, as I talked about before, relates to eye protection. So again, thinking through those different measures and some examples. The first one, that top of the pyramid is around elimination and that ban of fireworks to use only professional fireworks or professional fire shows. And this has been endorsed by many groups around the world. And I know there's been a petition signed by many of you to do this also in India as well. So looking at the case in the Netherlands, and one of our collaborators, the iGate, Jan, he has helped, been very successful in promoting for the Netherlands to reduce the amount of eye injuries. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the measures that he's put in place. So with the experience in the Netherlands, they only have fireworks once a year over New Year's Eve. And for them, it's the most unsafe evening of the year. And for a lot of us, and I know for many of you who are treating these injuries in India, Diwali is a time, a festival of light where people should be celebrating. And I know for many of you that are having to treat these eye injuries, it's not ever considered a time of celebration. It's a time of distress for many people when they suffer these eye injuries and having to treat them. So similarly, in Holland, they have a similar scenario for the ophthalmologist treating patients with these type of eye injuries, and they've instituted a lot of different policies and promoted prevention strategies. And for them, they put a ban on, they tried to institute a ban on firecrackers, and in particular on rockets, which are known to be quite severe. And they've been promoting the use of protective glasses and for those selling fireworks to accompany the sale of fireworks with eye protection. And Jan, who's featured here in this photo, he does a lot of promotion in the media, which I would encourage you all to do, to use your influence to be able to promote the devastating consequences of these fireworks injuries or firecracker injuries. And obviously all of that will help to push in terms of a public campaign. So again, looking at different measures and thinking about how we can do this, restrictions being around the top of the pyramid, you know, legal certification of particular devices. They've been quite successful in reducing the time frame, and I know parts of India have done this as well. So restricting their hours around when they can be used, restricting the time and the place that they've been sold, and then the last measure around protective glasses. So this little graph just shows you how successful they were in the Netherlands by just reducing that window from 2008 to 2018 in terms of the number of injuries. So when they dropped it from 16 hours to 8 hours, the effect that had on the number of eye injuries. So lastly, again, I would certainly encourage you all to be involved in campaigns to reduce eye injuries, and I would congratulate again on the use of, or the development of this brochure, which Mohan and Rupesh talked about in the beginning. This has now been developed in 4 languages, and I think there's talk about some other languages as well. This is all really helpful in helping people to understand the consequences of these eye injuries and how to use firecrackers more safely. There's of course a number of things that can be done to help make these more safe, but in particular for us as eye care practitioners to really think about that effectiveness of the different ways that we can go forward and the role that you play in the community for trying to spread that message. And you in particular all see the dire consequences of these injuries and what this does not only to individuals, but their families. So thinking again about education, protection, and policies, and using all of these pillars to try and push forward and reduce the burden of injuries from firecrackers. So again, just thinking about the different alternatives that we have and how we can put this in place. There should be a number of different pillars that we can work on and use that to really push forward. And one of the other things is thinking about collaborating with other different peak bodies. So if ophthalmology can get together with other medical industries who are involved in treating these fireworks injuries, burn specialists and others, together as peak bodies, we can help to reduce the burden of these injuries and encourage others to bring about policies and standards to reduce that. Just wanted to acknowledge again all of the people involved in iGates and Rupesh in particular, who's been a huge support, TNOA, APOTS, and Jan for his slides that he shared with me. Thank you again.
Thank you, Annette, for the wonderful, wonderful talk, I would say, because you have given, underlined the importance of education, which is very, very important to create an awareness. Just like we created awareness on diabetic retinopathy, and we have to create awareness on how the firecracker injuries can be very serious to the eye. I think we can open the panel now, and Rupesh, I would like you to start off the panel discussion on this particular thing.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan. And I think this is something which I'm sure the panelists are quite familiar with this topic. Dr. Natarajan sir, will probably start with you. And if you are able to unmute yourself and please guide us, what do you think we should be probably doing in some of the directions which Annette says, maybe just 1 line or 2 lines about the strategies we should be developing, if you can say, before we move to Dr. Ganga and Dr. Ramakrishnan. So if you're busy, maybe Dr. Ganga.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think
is still in the meeting.
Yeah, so we can go to Dr. Ganga, sir.
Ganga, yeah, that's fine.
So Dr. Ganga, you have seen efforts from over many years from OTSI, APOTS and all. How do you think we should streamline our efforts and make it happen so that we can reduce the impact or reduce the burden of firecracker injuries? What do you think in line with Annette's talk?
Yeah, rather than think of a big picture, the simplest way I think we all as eye care professionals can do is start in our own clinics and offices where we have captive audience of parents, grandparents, children waiting in our offices, and we are meeting with them one-on-one. I think that's probably ground zero where we should start the awareness with flyers and brochures right around before these kind of celebratory festival events, showcasing pictures of badly traumatized eyes. Yes, we brag about producing wonderful surgical outcomes and restoring vision, but we want to showcase the disasters, all of which can be prevented. Of course, legislation is coming in, and Dr. Christie is going to talk about it. But to me, the ophthalmologist office and the allied healthcare professionals of optometrist clinics are the way we should be starting this advocacy campaign. Thank you.
I think these are some important points which to take for all of us. Dr. Ramakrishnan, sir, will you like to add to what Dr. Ganga said? Anything?
Yes,
in particular?
really, it's a wonderful speech by Dr. Haskin. Of course, mainly the targeting the focusing on the target population, especially the younger age group, the school going and also the college going people is very, very important, because they are the most vulnerable people, those who are supposed to get the injury because of the firecrackers. And of course, last few years, what we are doing, we mainly send flyers and videos, and also personally we go to all the schools in and around the hospital, and also we have given them some material to display in the school, not only in the school, and also we involved some of the government officials like officers and other people. And then we used to, we are keeping posters in some of the important places like a Diwali festival. No? So everybody will go to the textile shop or jewelry, and also even the cracker shop. So all these places we have, with their permission, with their name, we have put the poster. And this created a lot of awareness in the general public, not only school children and also in the general public. In addition, we have involved, it's better to involve the NGOs. They are also very much interested in doing this type of preventive aspect, like Rotary clubs or Lions Club. If we involve all of them, definitely we can create a better awareness, and thereby we can reduce the calamities due to firecrackers.
Thank you, Dr. Ramakrishnan, sir. Dr. Mehul, you have a point to make in addition to what Dr. Ramakrishnan, sir, said just now.
Yeah, I think all these things are about urban areas and metro cities. While working in rural areas, we find a very typical problem. So basically, during Diwali festival, all the small private practitioners are away from the clinic.
Yes.
And people don't have any place to go for emergency treatment. So when we create a demand, but if there is no supply, then there is serious problem. So we have to make ourselves available.
Yes.
So what we do is we do 1 lakh SMS every day to make sure that our hospital is working round the clock 24/7. So if you have an injury, you can come to us anytime. This is number one. Number two, there are many non-regulated manufacturers of the firecrackers of local type. They create on their own in houses. So if we can, during that, we find a lot of other accidents happening. So we can stop that by using the legislation. At least unauthorized manufacturers can be stopped. So these are important points. What we understand may be useful, at least in our area will work.
No, thank you, Dr. Mehul. These are all very useful points. Or Dr. Mohan Rajan, over to you, and then.
Because I know personally, because Dr. Ramakrishnan sent all the posters and other details to me, and what Aravind Eye Hospital, Tirunelveli and Madurai are all centers are doing is really remarkable, fantastic. They are coordinating with each and every NGO or whatever, even a shop owners, and they're trying to create an awareness is something phenomenal work, incredible work, sir. Thank you very much. That's what we are trying to replicate in the TNOA as well as APOTS. So,
Dr. Mohan Rajan, sir, one point I have in addition to everyone said, and I think, do you think at some stage can it become a reportable event, and at All India Ophthalmic Society at TNOA level, can we make it, because then that will definitely do something in long run if we make it a reportable event. Just again a point for someone to consider. But like we have certain things as a reportable event, HIV, AIDS, and some of the other contagious diseases. If we make this as a reportable event, it can really probably make some difference. I don't know, but that's just a food for thought. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's a way forward. We should make sure that it's a reportable event, just like we are doing for mucormycosis now.
Yeah,
okay? We are notifying it, and similar to that, we can do for the cracker injuries as well. Because then only we know exactly what is the gravity of the problem as well.
Yeah.
And Annette, I just wanted to ask you one question before you go on to the next speaker. Is that you have mentioned very beautifully that 50% are the bystanders, okay, who are standing, we were not bursting anything or doing anything, they're just standing there. So is there any way, because 50% is a huge number, okay, in my opinion, and if you're able to at least create an awareness that bursting crackers is one aspect that you have to prevent, what are the preventive measures you have to take, but even standing nearby you should avoid, okay. So that's what I think we should also focus on the remaining 50% as well. So I don't know what's the opinion on the panelists on this.
Vivek.
Maybe just a quick comment on that, Mohan. Yes. I absolutely agree. I think it's really important to focus that. And I think on some of the advocacy campaigns, keeping children well away from any firecrackers that have been burst. And I guess if you think of the age and the size, the smaller children, the position that they're in, they're more likely to be down close to the firecrackers, so they're more exposed to these things. So when we talk about children being around firecrackers, to keep them as far away as possible, I think is a really important part of that campaign, but particularly to understand the hazard to those people that are around, as you say, as well as the people who are actually holding and lighting or lighting the firecrackers.
Fantastic. I think,
yeah, sir, we should move forward.
Yeah, I think we'll go on to the next speaker, and is none other than Dr. Rajiv Raman of Shankar Nethralaya. And Rajiv Raman is I would say the superhero as far as diabetic retinopathy and ocular trauma, everything is concerned. And he's going to talk to us on a very important topic, the impact of firecracker injuries. I'm talking about the social impact and other impacts, the morbidity, everything Rajiv Raman will cover now. Over to you, Rajiv.
We'd like to thanks, Annette. Thank you, Annette.
Thank you, Annette.
Thanks, Annette.
A lot. Sorry for the delay.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Dr. Mohan Rajan. Thanks, TNOA, for taking such a good initiative on just a couple of days before the Diwali festival. And next couple of minutes, I'll be sharing some thoughts on impact of firecracker injuries. So, especially in context to our country, India. So definitely the use of cracker is associated with festivity, and important thing is they are very readily available during this festival. There is no legislation regarding who can buy these firecrackers. And again, there is no legislation regarding where can it be lit. So that's the reason we get a lot of these injuries. They are even in a small street, people light these firecrackers, and even children can buy. How common is it? So this is actually a very recent 2020 study from India, where you had nearly 3.5 times more prevalence of firecracker injury as compared to US. So definitely, though our population is also large, but if you look at per 100,000 population per year, we are nearly 10 per 100,000 population. That's the incident, the prevalence of the firecracker injury in our country. Why it happens, and this was again a good study by Kurian et al., who again said that it's mainly negligence, the lack of supervision, device malfunction. Again, the attempt to reignite a firecracker is something which majority of times causes a firecracker injury, or recovering a failed device is another method by which people get injury. And what causes the firecracker injuries? So again, a study from India, it's these flower pots, though we have all others too, but flower pots are the ones, they many times though they show only light, but sometimes it blasts, and even these the fire from that can cause firecracker injury. It's one of the very common cause of injury in our country. Where is the injury? So most common, about 37%, it's the neck, face, and eyes. Next is hands, and next is legs. So basically, it's all the exposed parts of the body where the injury due to firecracker is common. But the sad part is it's not only alone. Majority of time, about a third of these, they have combination of injuries. It's not only eye, but they have facial injuries, they have injuries in hand. So it's the combination which are common, and that causes a lot of morbidity. Who are commonly affected? It's the younger age group, as even the IGATES also found strong male preponderance, and almost more than half of the victims are bystanders. And Dr. Mohan really raised a very important thing, that can we do something to prevent this injury to the bystander? How are these firecrackers actually made? Because that is what causes the problem. So you have oxidizer, you have fuel, and you have coloring, all of them causing various types of injuries to the eye. The sad part is it's not only these, the local made, what Dr. Mehul rightly said, many times will have a lot of sharpnels, they have a lot of these stones. And I still remember one of the Diwali which I operated, there's even cow dung. So you can imagine it's not only the chemical, the mechanical impact, it is the bacteria and causing a panophthalmitis. So this case actually needed a evisceration. How firecrackers can cause ophthalmic injury? It has multiple aspects. So it can cause a thermal injury, a chemical injury, mechanical injury, a blunt injury. Mechanical, I would say, is a penetrating type of injury. And majority of time, again, it's the combination which causes more damage to the eye. There is a lot of impact. And what is the cost? If I look at it's the healthcare cost, direct medical cost, the transportation, hospital stay, surgery. So definitely there is a lot of this besides the social cost, the absences from work, and also a great burden to the healthcare workers. As Rupesh rightly said, that 3 days, so many cases done in LVP. Definitely, it's a great burden to the healthcare workers. In India, the legislature came, and next talk will highlight about it, but the impact of the firework was beyond eye, which forced the policymakers to change this. So I thought that I started thinking that it was not eye, it was not the healthcare. What forced the policymakers to make these rules in India were beyond eye. The smog in Delhi was one of the important factors which caused the change. So it's multiple other effects of firecracker injury, the animal torture. The pets really have a very bad time during Deepavali. The harmful gases in the air you see during Diwali, these type of things. The cracker also affects the newborns and pregnant women. You see a lot of premature deliveries during the time of Deepavali. Again, one of the things which I found very recently when preparing for this talk. A lot of fire accidents because of firecrackers. The garbage, I'm sure all of you would have seen this scene of these lad, which you say these small firecrackers, and the whole road is full of this garbage. And the child labor, many of us in Tamil Nadu know that what happens in Shivkasi, the child labor causing who are involved in making these firecrackers. So actually, these were the factors which led to the cracker ban. Starting from Delhi and gradually many states, I'm sure the next talk will cover in more details, many states taking this cue from Delhi and causing ban, not only on the timing, but also like no sale in a residential area. That was a good move in Maharashtra. And Supreme Court in 2018 made a landmark ruling of banning the conventional fireworks, and it was enforced between 2 hours limit, 8 to 10 p.m. during Deepavali, and also starting this initiative of green crackers, where you don't have these type of harmful chemicals, is something which has very recently come in India too. So if you look at the key messages regarding the firecracker injury, I would like to give would be: 1, children and adolescents are more affected. Onlookers and passerbys are more affected. A third also have associated injuries. And we all know that despite maximum therapy treatment, they have long-term consequences. There is socio-economic consequences of eye injuries, and we know that successful prevention is possible. Thank you very much. I'll just, it's a Shubh Deepavali for all of you, and giving a message on diabetes. Chini kam, magar mithas bharpur. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rajiv. Rajiv, as usual, you are fantastic. Every time I listen to you, I get inspired and motivated because you have very clear messages, and you are talking about the socio-economic impact. But I think there's also a lot of psychological impact as well.
Absolutely true.
One of my patients who was about 15 years or 16 years old, this happened about 10 years back. And, he had a disfigured face and he had a ruptured globe as well and lost the eye. And he committed suicide after that because it had a huge impact on his, on his psyche. So I think there's a way forward. I think something we have to do as an association, only like TNOA or AAOS or IPOTS or the OTSA can do this together. We all have to work together to do this. And over to Rupesh for a panel discussion. Rupesh?
Yeah, thank you, sir. And once again, Rajiv, always, as Dr. Mohan Rajan sir said, you have very clear messages from your talk. I'll open this for panel. So Dr. Ganga, sir, you like to kind of continue with what we had in previous talk from Annette and see what Rajiv has to say about the socio-economic and psychological aspect. What message will you like to give through Rajiv's talk to everyone?
Nothing much more to add. I think Rajiv has all the experience and the science behind it with a level-headed, balanced perspective. I only hope with the legislation which was passed on a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, and COVID has woken us all up to relevance of healthcare and healthcare costs and getting our priorities right. This legislation is now followed by enforcement. And once again, I think as eye care professionals, we start at our doorstep in our own offices, start educating our patients, our families, and the devastating outcomes despite the best medical outcomes, best medical intervention. And I appreciate thought leaders like Mohan and Ramakrishnan and Rajiv Mehul to take this forward. And we hope to see dwindling numbers of this problem in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Dr. Ganga sir, for enlightening us. Dr. Ramakrishnan sir, any thoughts from your vast experience about this gigantic problem and the impact you would have seen in many, many years
also,
of your practice?
Rupesh, I want to ask Ramakrishnan because he is very close to Sivagasi as well.
Yeah.
Sivagasi is the capital of fireworks in India, and it is one town near between Madurai and Tirunelveli, near Virudhunagar. And Ramakrishnan, because I have been to visit Sivagasi, the absolute lack of standardization, lack of quality is really a big problem in Sivagasi. That's the reason why these flower pots, they're supposed to light burst. Yeah, that's a big problem actually, and one of the common causes, as Rajiv said. Ramakrishnan sir, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Rajiv Raman, for a nice talk on impact of this firecrackers. And of course, there are two aspects. One is we are mainly concerned about the firecracker injury. Those who had multiple, there's different types of injury, including eye and other parts of the body. Other things, what Dr. Mohan Rajan just he was asking about, since we are very close to the Sivagasi. One thing, manufacturer of firecrackers, there is no standardized protocol or procedure or anything in making if you take a flower pot or some other this thing, there is no standardized method of manufacturing. Even the ingredients, the gunmetal or the other coloring agent, is not at all standardized. And also another important thing, what I feel, these workers, those who are working in that factory, they are exposed to chronic exposure to all these metals and gases. So what we have observed in some of the cases, some of the people working in that industry, that especially the anemia, and also the previous speaker, this Dr. Rupesh was mentioning about the miscarriages, abortion. The incidence of abortion is also very much high in people working in that industries, and also the incidence of especially the cancer, lung cancer, because of the chronic inhalation of these material. That also has been reported, not reported, mainly because I see many of my colleagues, the doctor friends, they used to say as an incidence of lung cancer, even hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism also is very high in that region. That also we have to, unless we have a very strong legislation and the manufacturer aspect also, that's also one of the important things. And one question to Raju, you told about the green crackers. I heard in US that especially in Disney World and Disneyland in California and Florida, they have eco-friendly alternatives. You have something to say on that?
Yes, sir. These green crackers actually they replace these nitrates. They say not to use nitrates, but a safer alternative, which just makes a little sound and gives light, but it doesn't cause thermal injury. So these are very safe. Like that's the reason it doesn't cause much damage. So there is even now in Delhi, people are now thinking of using only the green crackers to ban the other one. That's why no, this year people are now shifting towards these green crackers. Yeah, one of the just one thought, sir, Dr. Mohan Rajan, your idea of using bystander, I think TNOA should. That's an excellent idea, and so I always feel that we really don't have what is the safe distance.
Yeah.
If we can say, advocate that at least 100 meters or some distance that this apart you should be there, and 2 hours when the crackers are there, you cannot travel on these small roads, avoid giving some messages which can prevent this 50% of bystanders would be a great idea. TNOA should take it.
No, one of the main problems which we are facing every time, every Diwali is that I asked if all the people, all the children are bursting the crackers inside their apartment. So they asked them why you're doing it inside their apartment, in the sense that inside the apartment, the complex. So they said, we don't have space outside. We don't have space outside even to play. Now I'm asking, because to prevent myopia, I'm asking the children to go out and play. They said, we don't have a playground. In a city like Chennai or Bombay or Delhi or whatever it is, there's no place for them to go out and play. So leave alone bursting the crackers. This is a huge problem. So all the apartment complexes are all so, what we call, congested. And
so the only way to get around the bystander and the direct injury problem probably, and which can definitely reduce many things which we have spoken in the first 2 lectures, is by professional bursting the cracker at community places. So if you identify in each city 5 or open ground, 5 or 6 places, but burst it by the professional people, everyone goes there, they get their sweets and whatever the Diwali gifts and all, and then they go and enjoy and come back home very nicely, happily and all. I think that can significantly reduce, and that people have witnessed that. People have, I think it is a time tested, and it can definitely help. It's not culturally shocking also to the people not to burst the firecracker, and it will definitely do a lot of savings for pollutions, bystander, everything. I think in one go itself, you are killing many stuff together. I think if we can manage that, and if that can be regulated, and if that can be enforced, as Dr. Ganga very rightly said,
I think we should all collectively do this. And
yes, sure. We should move to probably.
Absolutely.
Next talk.
Yeah, next talk. We go to the next talk, and the next talk is none other than Dr. Josephine Christie from Aravind Pondicherry, and she is going to talk to us on preventive aspects and the legislations as far as firecracker injuries are concerned.
Sir, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, Josephine.
Yeah. Okay.
Christie,
At the outset, I would like to thank the organizing committee and the executive members of TNOA, APOTS and OTSI, and special thanks to President TNOA, Dr. Mohan Rajan sir, for giving me this opportunity. And so today I'll be largely focusing on the preventive aspects from the Indian perspective. And I would also like to apologize in advance if the views presented here are not up to the present standards, because you'll be hearing from an ophthalmologist who's new to this ophthalmic trauma area. And my sincere respects to all the senior members who've done enormous efforts in this area. So moving on to the talk. So India is a country of festivals and ceremonies, and firecrackers is an inseparable means of this celebration. And each and every individual is free to light his own crackers wherever or whenever she wants. And yes, it is in spite of knowing that firecrackers can cause firecracker injuries. So it is a preventable man-made accident. So why are we still bursting crackers in spite of knowing that it can harm us? So the joy that some of us get while bursting crackers is something similar to the joy that we get while playing Candy Crush, or the craving that we have to eat chocolates even when we know that our blood sugars are high up the charts. So this is a joy that can't be curbed so easily. So that is why my talk today is not on banning crackers, instead on the preventive aspects of firecracker injury. So my talk will be under the following topics: to understand the common reasons for injury, who, what, and how to address, what is the present scenario, and what are the future directions. So the common reasons for injury, as already discussed by the previous speaker, Dr. Rajiv Raman sir. So the lack of knowledge about the risk of injury and the safety measures, failure to follow the safety measures, malfunction and mishandling of crackers, using illegal homemade crackers, and absence of parental supervision are the common reasons for cracker injury. So whom to address? The major stakeholders are the buyers, the general public, the sellers of fireworks, treatment givers, and policy makers. So among the buyers, as already discussed by Dr. Annette, so many statistics in India as well as worldwide have found the children and the school-going group are the majority affected, followed by young adults. And it is also important to remember, we should not only be focusing on this specific group, but also the general public, because as discussed earlier, 50% of them are bystanders again. What to address? So while I was preparing for this talk, I did a random search on Google on why are fireworks bad. So the main results were it increases in local air pollution. It can be an asthma trigger, and it is a leading contributor to respiratory diseases, vomiting, and cardiac toxicity, etc. But there was no mention of injuries. So that is where we are here to make some noise, that firecrackers always have a risk of injury, a common cause of fire accidents, along with the other safety precautions that we need to address. Those are the general safety instructions while bursting crackers, and the immediate first aid measures. So now moving on to how to address. So the buyers or the general public can be largely addressed through the social media, and the children can be addressed through the schools, because teachers are the key role models and facilitators, and they can work magics in the children's mind. And the hospitals and the cracker selling units like firecracker shops are the common places where we can reach out to the public. And the sellers of fireworks can be reached through the licensing or the permitting sites and the unions and the associations dedicated for them. And treatment givers can be reached through CME programs like this. And yes, we have to reach beyond, because we need to reach the caregivers at all levels. And policymakers like government's attention can be obtained by impactful publications, and also medical associations from the state level and national level can do some impactful work. So this is a snapshot of the present scenario, the previous Indian government legislation that were in place. So in 2005, the Apex Code introduced a complete ban on sound emitting firecrackers between 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. and it allowed only colorful fireworks. And in 2018, the Delhi court allowed only green crackers to curb air as well as noise pollution, and they also had a 2-hour limit. And pre-COVID, we were also recommended by National Green Tribunal for cracker ban recommendations in almost 18 states, but it was actually followed in 9 states in India. And in 2021, amidst so many controversies, until now, cracker ban has been introduced in Delhi, Rajasthan, Odisha, West Bengal, and Punjab. So now what are these green crackers? These are nothing but crackers which are made by using less polluting raw materials. So they have a distinct green logo on it. They were developed by the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, and it is easy to actually scan them through a QR code. Unfortunately, these are quite costly also compared to the conventional crackers. And the advantages of these green crackers are they emit pollutants, but at a 30% lesser rate. They emit sound, but at a lesser rate than the conventional crackers. But of note, it is important that in no way it reduces the risk of injury, and hence the damage still exists. So until now, there had been so many efforts taken by the healthcare workers and non-governmental organizations in order to create awareness by newspaper articles, by awareness campaigns, by poster competitions at schools, by awareness exhibitions in the hospital levels, etc. But still, the present status of firecracker injury incidents is not less, it is not promising. I could find 3 studies regarding the overall firework incidents. This study by Puri et al. In 2006 found that the prevalence of firecracker injuries decreased, whereas Standen et al. Had proved that the firecracker injury doubled during the 9-year period in 2010, and also highlighted the sad fact that in spite of the legislation being introduced in 2006, it did not have any impact in the reduction of incidents. And a recent study by Sethi et al. Done in CMC Vellore, Tamil Nadu, found the prevalence to be 10 per 100,000. And they also underscored another important fact that these firecracker injuries occurs throughout the year and not only during the Diwali festivals. So now moving on into the future directions. So the role of the healthcare workers along with NGOs and the governments has to go hand in hand in order to create any impact in this area. So let's go ahead and promote a Go Green Diwali. So Diwali cracker chocolate boxes are the new innovative Go Green modalities. And these are sound trick snappers, which is a brilliant alternative to the harmful sound emitting crackers. And it was a good hit among the children for the past 1 year. And the Festival of Lights cannot be better celebrated without this diyas. So, and it's high time we buckle up and come out of a comfort zone and start utilizing the social media. So I couldn't resist sharing this meme that I was came across when I was preparing for Say No to Crackers. So there was another meme by Laughing Colors, which is totally misguiding to the young adults. So these brilliant meme creators can definitely be collaborated, and we can definitely use them. We can redirect their brilliance to a productive and a protective meme. And there was another site which had book my crackers, like book my tickets. So when social media is soaring up this high, it's high time we need to rise up above them in order to, from our conventional awareness initiatives, we need to be in the present world in order to compete with them. And these mobile caller tunes were a huge hit during COVID-19. It had a wonderful reach among the semi-urban and the rural population, though this might not be completely possible. So in our hospital, Arvind Pondicherry, like for the past 3-4 years, during the glaucoma awareness programs and eye donation fortnight programs, we had simple awareness messages in hospital caller tunes and connecting tunes. So we were one step ahead in reaching the, similar to eye donation awareness videos, we can also use them for safety awareness videos. And we shouldn't forget the young YouTubers who are exponentially growing up in the recent times. I'm sure the people in Tamil Nadu will be well aware of this Ritu Rocks, and they are easier alternatives for us to reach the target, the audience. And it's time we create a very active and a dedicated website like the ones that here that I have taken from AAO, with better infographics that reaches the digital population and simple videos that can be served. And we also need to create a proper surveillance system because a big data can definitely bring about a big change. So, as we previous speakers and the panelists were discussing, so only when the data is good and only when the reporting is good, we will know the effect of impact, and this can in turn lead to a big change. And we should not forget to work as a team, because firecracker related injuries are always dealt by multiple specialities. And the most often the common pitfalls in ocular emergency management and trauma ICUs are either the vision is not tested properly or the irrigation of the eye is missed. Inadequate information on ocular trauma and occult globe ruptures are most often missed. And even the eye examination can be missed because of life-threatening trauma. So it's our responsibility to have inter-speciality training programs and create proper standard operating protocols. So yes, in order to make some noise, we also need to involve in marketing. So as ophthalmologists, it is our responsibility to make sure that these safety goggles, that is the protective eyewear made from polycarbonate materials, are available in our optical shops, because normal eyeglasses can shatter with impact, increasing the severity of the eye injuries, and also the contact lenses are contraindicated at these times. And we should also make these emergency burns kits available. And it's logical on our part to support and align with NGOs who are with similar goals as ours. And looking into the possible future directions for the government, it will be a good alternative in the future to restrict the fireworks to open space, especially done by professionals. And it is important to have legalizations and a good quality check on the materials and the production units and the manufacturing of these firecrackers. And similar to health hazard displays on the cigarette packs, it would be nice if a government came out with initiatives to have injury hazard pictures in the firecracker products, along with the safety instructions and first aid instructions. And for the past 1 year, in Tamil Nadu alone, we had 5 illegal firecracker manufacturing unit meeting with an accident, claiming around 25 to 30 people with injuries and almost 5 to 10 people dead. So apart from the individual firecracker related injuries, these accidents are also becoming common. So it's important that we also ban illegal fireworks. And it is not sufficient to frame legislations. It's important to implement with an iron hand, especially in countries like India. And also we can't deny the fact that firecracker industries employs around 10 lakh people all over India, and its market size is expected to be around rupees 5,000 crore. And just a blanket cracker ban can have a huge economic impact as well. So the government, when introducing cracker bans, needs to have a clear future policy ahead. And last but not the least, I would like to highlight the medical legal issues, especially for ophthalmologists. So remember to document compulsively, and also remember the axiom: if it was not documented, then it is definitely equal to not done. So explain all the potential risk and the long-term sequelae to the patients as well as attenders, and make sure to document all of these, and rule out intraocular foreign body and do all the necessary investigations that is required to do this, and maintain a good patient rapport. And as highlighted by the panelists, the mental impact is enormous. And as ophthalmologists, we also should take the responsibility to take care of this mental impact as well. So wishing you all a safe and happy Diwali. Be safe. Thank you.
That was an incredible talk, Josephine. I think there was a 360-degree coverage as far as the preventive aspects are concerned. I just wanted, before we go to the panel, I just wanted, is there any quality control initiative by the manufacturers of firecrackers in Sivagasi? I don't know, any panelists can answer that?
Dr. Mohan Rajan, sir, I wrote to the chairman of the Sivagasi Fireworks Association, and yes, I got their email, but never got any reply. I was thinking of getting them as one of the moderators or one of the panelists for today's thing. Yes. But unfortunately, and I thought I'll give you a surprise by getting one of them, but could not get hold of them. And hopefully we can have one fireside talk with them, and where you can be the thing. And in maybe next 2 weeks, we can try and get them on the board, and we can have one fireside talk with one of the manufacturers of fireworks. Probably we can do that. That's just a suggestion. But right now, no, there is no quality control. There are a lot of things which are happening, and there are at least 50 over manufacturers. And as Dr. Mehul very rightly said, there are a lot of people who make that, and there is nothing like a quality check before a firecracker is released into the market for use. Unfortunately,
I think that is very what do you call? It's a very sad news. Yeah. Now, if you are going to ask somebody, because it's going to have a huge impact, not only on the mental, but also on the eye, on the vision, on the health of the individual. And there's absolutely no quality control initiative which has been taken by the government or from the manufacturers. I think it's deplorable, I would say. Yeah, it's not a Ramakrishnan sir. You have something to say on this?
Yeah, I think Rupesh is correct. There is no quality check, and also there is no standardized protocol for manufacturing. And also, so many people they are producing, manufacturing these firecrackers without getting a proper license. Also, that's also happening.
So, sir, as we move into the panel discussion, I think I will congratulate Dr. Josephine for really presenting a wonderful talk. And as Dr. Josephine, you pointed out many aspects. So yeah, APOTS was to launch the page, a dedicated page for firecracker injuries on the website. And we are working on it. I think it got slightly delayed, but we'll be launching it soon. I thought we will give it opening today, but probably in next few days it will be there. And it has all the contents, what we need to have, including the videos and all those things. And with TNOA's permission, can we have a recording of this talk also on that page, so that people can then visit it and particularly review your talk and other talks as well, so that it will be wonderful. But I think I really enjoyed your talk. Dr. Ganga, anything to add to Josephine's talk?
I think it's probably one of the best talks I've listened in several years. Of course, all speakers have been great. I think India has a unique challenge that it has religious and cultural barriers to banning fireworks on top of industrial employment, economic productivity. And I think the industry has to be reskilled and rehabilitated so that we provide them an alternative earning resource. So it's easier for them to give up all the illegal and the legal aspects of firework industries. And I think we have to put politics aside and religion aside and cultural aside, saying that historically we have fables about wars and fireworks. That should not come in the way. Just out of curiosity, Dr. Mohan Rajan, Dr. Ramakrishnan, I'm even curious, are there going to be any television ads going to come up in the next few days? And can you even think about it now, where we can use this flyers and brochures where these TV stations can blast these thing for the next few days. And finally, coming to public display of fireworks, not public display of affection, we can now rope in the sponsors, how they sponsor cricket tournaments and football games and badminton and so on and so forth. They can be sponsoring the public display of fireworks where the community joins and enjoys, so that we can actually prevent all these injuries. So several ideas, but maybe a TV ad in the next few days, maybe an immediate outreach. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm working on the TV ad, Ganga. And yes, I'm doing that as well. And just to create awareness just before Diwali, so that it will have a huge impact as far as reducing the firecracker injuries are concerned. But I just want to know, because this Diwali is mainly in our country, okay? In Singapore, do you see firecracker injuries at all? Or in other countries? I want your opinion on that.
So Netherlands, the data was presented because that's the New Year Eve, and we have a wonderful talk by Professor Yan on that, and how they used to have that. Australia don't have anything. I think Australia has a zero almost firecracker injury. Singapore does not have anything.
US also, I think they have on the New Year.
Yeah. So there also they get significant.
Yes.
So I think along the line of this advertisement, I have one very critical observation which I always observe. So while people smoke cigarettes, and every cigarette packet has that banner on that smoking cigarette is injurious to health, and people have that in front and then they still smoke. So, it is so controversial that how to educate, because it is written there, it can cause cancer. We have TV advertisement, but we still see people dying out of lung cancer. So I don't know, what do you think, Dr. Ramakrishnan sir, about that? This is such an ironical thing. People still smoke while written there on that.
Also good for cigarette as well as liquor also.
Yeah, same thing. Don't know.
But now
cigarette is more dangerous than liquor.
Yeah.
No, there is a very good evidence that emotional.
Welcome.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'm just outside, so my video is off. I'm just saying there's a very good evidence that emotional counseling doesn't really work.
Okay.
And we have also tried that in eye care. where people with PDR and the whole, if they have not treatment in time, they get detachment or bleeding in the eye. We have tried to do emotional counseling versus technical counseling. And we found technical is better than even emotional. Emotional is like threatening that you will become blind, if you don't come in time for laser. So all these smoking ads and all that really didn't touch. But even if you take AIDS, there are certain things which touch them, not the emotional ones.
Yeah. No, this
Like,
is interesting. Even in COVID time also, when we tell about people about the impact which we had it in May, June, the number of deaths. But after that also people are back to the same thing, what they are not supposed to do. I don't know.
Exactly.
You're right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, very interesting observations. So probably
we need
Dr. Mohan Rajan sir, we should move forward. Yeah.
We need celebrities. Mohan Rajan.
Other day will here to celebrate.
No, actually, you'll not believe it. I had spoken to superstar Rajini on Wednesday when he came back from Delhi. And I told him, sir, I want you to give a message as the president of Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association. I requested him to give a message on the firecracker injuries. He said he will do it. But unfortunately, on Thursday afternoon, 1 o'clock, he got admitted in Kaveri.
Yeah.
Correct,
So,
sir.
And it's very unfortunate. Otherwise, I think I wanted to do it before Diwali.
That would have made impact.
Huge impact.
That would have made impact.
Sir, I don't know about Rajinikanth, but I reached out to 2 celebrities. They said they are busy. They don't have 2 minutes of time for that. Probably if we give them money, probably they will do that.
It's not only money, Rupesh. See, they won't give because it's again sensitive. No, it's like it's like a religion and cultural. You don't celebrate it. They take it like that.
It's all political.
Yeah.
I just wanted one line from him. Just one line. Hey, be careful while bursting firecrackers, it can injure the eye. That's all. He said, okay. He agreed in principle. But unfortunately, he was admitted the very next day, within 12 hours after I spoke to him. Yeah. So, it is really
better luck next time.
But we will get somebody, definitely. Yeah. Okay, we'll go to the next talk. And next talk is none other than the hero of the ocular trauma, I would say. And
no, sir. These are very pampering.
No. Mehul, he doesn't require any wonderful work. Mehul and Shreyas, they are doing wonderful work in that. And fantastic. And he's going to talk to us on anti-segment.
My screen is visible to you?
Yes, Mehul.
Yeah. Thank you, Rupesh and Mohan, for some really pampering introduction, which is not correct. So anyway, I'll be talking about intersegment manifestation of firecracker injuries. That technically, I think everybody is aware, but I'll put some facts and figures which might help us to understand the things. So epidemiology is very, very important, as all we discussed, but the contexts are different in global, national, as well as local level. So this is the US National Electronic Injury Surveillance System. It says that 12 to 18% of injury across the globe is because of firework. And in this article, it is supported with the same. But important is how serious it is. So it is said that 1 out of 6 injuries causes the severe sight morbidity. As well as that also studies that the restrictive legislation and permissive legislation has got a significant difference, which gives the data that 0.35 per 100,000 and 2.70 per 100,000. But these are all international data where legislations are restrictive, minimal individual usage of the firecrackers, documentation and follow-up is there, and protective gadgets might be used by technical people while using it. But in India, we have a different mythological support, religious support, some political issues, and we don't believe in all this. So we don't have really clear data regarding firecracker injuries. Though we might have contributed to the IGETS firecracker study, but there are no clear data with us, but we have some few sporadic publications, and we have more damaging work than the firecrackers. So obviously, firecrackers is considered less important because more severe trauma is there. we have these two publications from northern India, as already she mentioned that Tandon et al. Radhika already published that there is no impact of any legislation in Delhi. And the Safdarganj hospital is receiving almost double population than after 2010. And important is the another finding which is highlighted is it is not only children, it is equal amongst the adult as well as children. And these are the two publications from southern India, one from Arvind and one from Shankar Netralaya. They also say the almost same thing. But the local, our publication, we have published the data of 1070 pediatric patient, and it has got only 2.8% firecracker injuries. And in adult, only is 0.2% firecracker injuries. So that makes the less common firecracker injuries than other type of injuries. That may be the reason people are not taking it more seriously. Now we can see that there are different type of firecrackers which causing different impact. These are the firecrackers which can cause penetrating, perforating, and closed loop contusion. And these are the firecracker which can cause the burns. So this is the setting which can cause blast as well as burn both. If something goes wrong with here, then she will have life-threatening. As we all know that 17%, 14 to 17% fire injuries to the eye. And here we can understand the mechanism of injury by Alfonso et al. They developed a model in which there is a sensor in the cadaver eye, and before closer to the 7 centimeter and distance of the 7 centimeter, they tried to create the different blast injuries, but unfortunately they could not find any serious injury in the retina, vitreous, or ocular wall. They could produce only corneal abrasions, which is not correct clinically. When we observe the clinically, we find the burns, we find the blast, and which can cause direct impact, which can cause blast, indirect impact, or chemical effect. These are the major effect what we see in the clinics. Considering the burns, we can see we can find out the in many patients there are generalized burns which can be very easily treated, but certain burns are more severe. Minor superficial burns may be managed by reassurance and simple medical treatment, but these are the serious burns which require multiple surgeries and lot of other modalities. This patient was treated with the lid reconstruction using the skin grafting, and ultimately patient could close the eye. This is the lid construction done without the skin grafting. Long-term goals are it can be treated with lid reconstruction, skin regrafting, management of cicatricial, ectropion, entropion. These are the indirect impact which can cause the flying objects which come to the eye from the distance, and these foreign bodies may be present either in conjunctiva or cornea, can cause minor morbidities which can be corrected. We can see these are the conjunctival foreign bodies because of firecracker. And direct impact in closed globe injury, we can see the commercial retinae and angle recession. And direct impact again in the closed globe can cause the dislocation of lens. This is all happened just because of firecrackers. Optic nerve avulsion as well as iridodialysis also seen. The management is medical treatment, surgical management, rehabilitation of aphakia. Direct impact also can cause the open globe injury. These are the open globe injuries just because of firecracker injuries. Again, there is a pseudophacocyl which can be seen. The post-operative patient, the wound got opened. The management is surgical debridement, wound closure, and management of aphakia. So there is another object of firecracker. This is the firecracker what we see that is from that special device which is used to celebrate the birthday It got blasted and patient had IUFB, which was treated at Shankarnath Chennai, and then ultimately patient lost the eye. These are the type of chemicals what I think Dr. Rajiv mentioned. It can cause a different impact. Symblepharon. This child had a symblepharon, and following treatment, this is the end result. This child also had a limbal impact, damage to the limbus, and limbal cell transplant and slat was done. This again, the chemical injury was done because of firecracker. Amniotic membrane graft was done for the same. So immediate cleaning with the chemical, irrigation, medical treatment, symblepharon correction, limbal cell transplant, slat, and amniotic membrane grafting may be useful. Management of open globe injury, the wound repair, lens management, and management of aphakia, and management of posterior segment can be done. This is the one case which has a firecracker blast injury as a direct impact. We could see that the phacocyl lens was dislocated, gone into the subconjunctival space. And this patient was treated with SFIOL later on, and fortunately, patient regained good vision. This is another case where patient had severe IPMA following blunt trauma. We could remove this patient, also regain good vision. So these are the this is just a management of aphakia in the trauma followed by firecracker. These are the specially designed the scleral tuck lens, self-sustained scleral fixated lens we are using in this. It has got a flipper on the side, which will be sustained. So this is the same thing in adult that was in pediatric patient. If consider the outcome, definitely there is significant improvement of the vision once we manage the cases, but it is more important to prevent the things and prevent the firecracker injuries, because we are not in enough number of people who manage the ocular injury. There are a lot of children who are coming to us with ocular injury every year, and we have a large number of injury database. We operate more than 900 injury cases a year, and obviously majority of them are pediatric patients. More than 40% are pediatric patients, and they are a future of our country. It's our responsibility to make some preventive betterment for them. And these all children, they don't have money, they cannot afford to live. So when we go to the outreach, then we bring them. They don't present. Our average presenting time for our children is 4 days. They come to the hospital after 4 days, 4 days of injury. Thank you.
Really mind-boggling stuff, Mehul. Mind-boggling. Fantastic. 900 trauma cases a year must be one of the largest in the country. So really phenomenal work you and Shreya are doing, and your entire team, I would say, Drashti Netralia. Hats off to you. We'll go on to the next talk by none other than Dr. Manoj Khatri, and who's Rupesh has already told is one of the, not only the competent VR surgeon, but is also one of the fastest VR surgeons I ever seen.
Yeah.
Manoj Khatri, over to firecracker injuries as far as posterior segment is concerned. Then we'll have a panel discussion.
Good evening, everyone. Once again, hope my slides are visible and I'm audible.
Slides are not visible first.
Slides not yet.
Share your presentation. Share.
But yeah, you're audible very clearly.
You are audible, but slide is not seen.
Okay. I was just waiting for you to unshare. Now
No,
it's
I have
visible.
already done it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you are able to see.
So
PowerPoint.
Yes, wonderful talks by the previous speakers.
I'm
Lot
not
of
able to
learning.
see a screen. Your
Not able
slides
to
are
see?
not.
Yeah.
Now
Coming. Yeah, I see here. Perfect.
Yeah. So wonderful talks by the previous speakers. A lot of learning is happening, and as Rupesh rightly said, this is just a revision course what we are having, all of us here. So posterior segment manifestations, there are many. I have just picked a couple of them, so which are quite common. No financial interest in my talk. We do work as as other prominent centers across India, as an ophthalmic trauma center which is open 24/7, 365 days at Rajan Kai Haikar Hospital, Chennai, and most of the fire injuries are during this November, December time when we have New Year celebration and also Diwali celebrations. We can divide these injuries basically from the posterior segment manifestations, either it's closed globe or open globe, and with or without presence of intraocular foreign bodies. But before we decide even to see, check these patients, always make sure that the patient is alert, have the consent to examine the patient. We need attender's consent as well, because the medical legal point of view is quite important. Always make sure that you're not dealing with the case of traumatic endophthalmitis. This is very, very important. First sitting itself, we should rule it out. Documentation has been recommended time and time again by all of us. It's a key. And also we are working on a global registry data. However, there are a lot of concerns whenever we see any patients either with anterior segment or a posterior segment injury because of the visual outcomes. They can be dramatic. Sometimes you get very good visual acuity outcomes. Sometimes it is on the reverse side. And timely intervention is the key. When we come to the posterior segment evaluation, there are spectrum of injuries, right? From vitreous to optic nerve to macula, retina, choroid, sclera. The list keeps going on. However, as general ophthalmologists, we all should be well versed with one particular technique of doing a good ultrasound B scan. It need not be done by a retinologist. It can be done by anyone. Basically, the most common presentation what we get is either hyphema, cataract, or vitreous hemorrhage. And we need to differentiate a couple of things when you see a patient like this, where nothing is visible on the retina. But you do a good ultrasound scan, and you can see, lot many details and prognosticate and try to, plan the treatment for this particular patient. Ultrasound B scan is the key. I am not going to go in the technical details of it, but what we have to rule out is we have to just see whether the lens is basically in position. It gives us quite a big detail of the intraocular, whether the patient is phakic or pseudophakic. We can see the posterior aspect of the lens. How is the vitreous, whether it is involved with blood, what is the extent, what is the injury to the macula and also to the optic nerve, and gloss integrity of the globe per se. There are a couple of pointers which are quite, nascent to see and which can be easily picked up. Something like a posterior vitreous detachment in this trauma patient. This patient also had a retinal detachment associated with it, so you can see that this patient already had an intraocular mass and an injury on this the eye, and then only presented to us as this kid who already had a retinoblastoma inside the eye and then presented with an injury. So it's very, very prominent here to see whether patients has associated eye problems as well. Sometimes diabetic retinopathy, and then they come with an injury, between the firecracker injury, and then you see whether the bleed is because of the diabetic retinopathy or because of, in this case, a mass lesion inside the retinoblastoma child. So B scan is the key, as I rightly said. It has to be done both in high gain as well as in low gain. Nowadays, there are very good ultrasound machines are available. We just need little bit of training, and if at all you have any doubt, your VR colleagues are always available round the clock to help you out. As in couple of these other cases, what we'll see here, this is a case of complete posterior vitreous detachment, and this patient had a multiple problems. He had incomplete posterior vitreous detachment. He had subhyaloid hemorrhage, he had vitreous hemorrhage, and he also had a tractional retinal detachment. So these kind of pointers tell you many things and how to manage these patients on a, in a better way. Another case where the patient already had a diabetic retinopathy and presented with a vitreous hemorrhage following trauma. And then you can see the other details as how to differentiate from asteroid hyalosis versus a vitreous hemorrhage. This patient presented with trauma with a total retinal detachment, as what you can see here. The prognosis remains a little poor, but if you can plan the surgery carefully, you can still get a good amount of, fair amount of, visual acuity gain for this patient. This patient had a very shallow retinal detachment. Clinically, even if whatever retina was visible appeared to be attached, but when we do a good ultrasound scan on a high gain, what you can see here is a very shallow retinal detachment, and the treatment plan changes completely. So these are a couple of pointers which have to be looked for each and every, all of us. Doing a good gentle ultrasound B scan is the key, which I always encourage to all my other colleagues as well who practice with us. This patient had a kissing choroidals, and you can see here the ampulla of vortex veins. So these kind of pointers can be picked up quite easily. These patients need medical management first, rather than taking them up, handling them surgically. Another patient who presented to us with trauma had a metallic intraocular foreign body. Sometimes it was lying on the surface of retina, sometimes coming into the vitreous. So this way you can judge how you are going to handle these patients. And as I rightly said, associated ocular pathologies has also been looked into for. So B scan is a very inexpensive tool. It's a very gentle tool. You can pick up many finders. This patient had optic nerve head cupping, presenting with advanced glaucoma and so on. When we look at a couple of other things which are commonly presented due to trauma, this is an Optos image showing a very good, clear picture of kind of a vitreous space avulsion, which has extended infratemporally to a significant degree. There are, multiple ways to manage this patient. Sometimes a close observation or a laser or even a buccal, or even nowadays with MIVS vitrectomy surgeries. But important thing here is to document. If you don't document these patients, they get some problem later on. They will always be keep, harassing you. Traumatic optic neuropathy is one of the other areas where we are really concerned. We never give importance to the evaluation of optic nerve. Whenever possible, a relative afferent pupillary defect have to look into that. This patient has a heme which is surrounding the optic nerve head region here, but also has optic nerve injury. And this is a kind of challenging cases where you see the central retinal artery occlusion, but we forgot to look at the optic nerve. This patient had optic nerve avulsion. So these are the couple of things which has to be looked into detail. Traumatic macular holes again is a subject by itself. Normally we don't intervene at least for 4 to 6 months. You see whether this hole closes on its own, but if it doesn't close on its own, then you have to intervene surgically. So these are a couple of things which have, often I thought will be of interest for general audience. And this patient had a submacular hemorrhage here, but there was a large area of commotio retina which was involving the inferior half of the retina. And this also prognosticates, either way. So you need to keep and document this patient. This patient has a montage of commotio retina, what you can see here. Over a period of time, they just did well with the medical management. Areas of concern which need immediate attention are retinal breaks and tears, which you cannot, just ignore. This patient does show posterior vitreous detachment, but when you look at carefully, there is a presence of fast-show tear. If you don't barrage it in time, if it is a barrageable lesion, this patient will go for a retinal detachment. As you can see here, shallow retinal fluid already presenting here. And in no time, the retinal detachment will keep increasing, and you will lose these eyes in front of you if you don't intervene at an early stage. So this is the key here, that you examine the periphery thoroughly whenever you can. If you are not able to examine thoroughly, always do a gentle ultrasound B scan. Retinal dialysis, that's what you can see here. This patient developed a giant retinal tear, was lasered elsewhere, but didn't hold on, and this patient needed an intervention immediate intervention because there was a presence of not only chronic cystic macular edema, but also the disc was starting getting plain because of injury. And we managed this patient over a period of time quite well with a good anatomical and functional outcome. And also another patient who is showing, when there is a delay in presentation, as Dr. Mehul says, when you see chronic macular changes who are sitting here with a kind of a open funnel or a closed funnel type of retinal detachments, these people, they need urgent attention. Choroidal rupture, it has to be looked quite carefully. Most often are not, even by a retina specialist, the choroidal rupture can be missed because we are looking only at the superficial layers of the retina. It is always most often are not seen as a concentric, kind of a rupture along the optic nerve head. And over a period of time, if not handled correctly, it can lead to choroidal neovascular membrane and all. Choroidal detachments have to be dealt medically wherever possible. If at all in rare incidences, it also needs a surgical drainage. Coming to open globe injuries, we can present you either with rupture, penetrating injury, perforating injury, with or without intraocular foreign body. So this remains a very big challenge. It has to be dealt quite immediately. And you should always look for signs of posterior globe rupture, even if the globe is not open. It can be a frank globe deformity, presence of intraocular air, or flattening of globe contour on the B-scan. Intraocular foreign body is quite challenging. In spite of doing a good clinical examination and also in ophthalmic investigations, we always recommend a computed tomography scan, that is a CT scan, so that you can know the extent of the intraocular foreign body in a much larger way, and also any associated other ocular problems, including the orbital region as well. This was the patient who had a presence of intraocular foreign body lying on the retina. Sometimes you can even have a dislocated lenses or intraocular lenses. This becomes a little tricky in a traumatized eye because managing these patients requires special attention. They are not the straightforward cases. As what you can see here in this patient, the lens IOL bag complex itself has dislocated inferiorly. Now, when you handle these patients over a period of time, surgery, I always tell everyone, is one aspect. Managing the complications or the post-operative period, it's also quite challenging. This patient had persistent cystic macular edema and needs treatment appropriately. Otherwise, you're not going to get a good functional and anatomical outcome. And also presence or absence of other secondary complications like epiretinal membrane, proliferative vitreoretinopathy has to be periodically looked into it. I have a couple of videos. If time permits, we can see them. Otherwise, do I have time, Rupesh? Or
go ahead. Make it fast. Yeah.
Sure. So this patient had as I said, diabetic vitreous hemorrhage along with a subhyaloid hemorrhage. The trick here is to do all these maneuvers quite gently in these eyes. We are using 23 gauge vitrectomy system here. As I rightly said, if you don't evaluate these patients pre-operatively, you can have intraoperative surprises. Another patient who had a retinal detachment associated with the trauma, and also the bleeding was not only pre-retinal, the bleeding was also in the subretinal space as well. This is a real-time video of removing this membrane. So it can just take few minutes, but identification of this retinal planes is very, very critical. Once you identify the plane of this membranes, the rest of the surgery becomes quite easy. As what you can see here, I'm using a forceps in one hand. And once you identify the plane, the membrane comes in toto quite easily. Another patient who had a very poor view due to the corneal opacity, but had a vitreous hemorrhage and ghost cell glaucoma. We needed to intervene early to tackle the glaucoma as well as the vitreous hemorrhage part, and the corneal treatment was managed quite successfully at a later stage. And what you can see here, doing gentle maneuvers, inducing the posterior vitreous detachment quite gently is the key. This patient again had a big injury here with a tractional detachment sitting right there. Over a period of time, needed a surgical intervention because this was not clearing up. And once we do all these maneuvers gently, handling and attaching these retinas become quite easy. Another patient who had a traumatic dislocation of the intraocular lens. What we are advocating here right now is not the limbal approach of vitrectomy. Even for anterior segment surgeons, the vitrectomy has to be done from the pars plana route. We advocate two port vitrectomy. One is an infusion and one is your cutter. So once you go from the pars plana route, the traction on the vitreous space is very, very minimal. As what you can see here, it's a closed chamber here other than opening from the limbus, and you can manage these patients quite well. So this is another new modifications what we have done in recent past. This was propagated by Abhay Vasavada sir for actually anterior vitrectomy. and it has been quite fairly managed. Now, a couple of challenging situations. This patient had a retinal detachment, but again, all these maneuvers have to be done quite gently. As you can see, the view was not very great. But once you know how to manage step-by-step approach, it becomes quite easy. This patient had a traumatic endophthalmitis. This always remains a challenge. But the key here is to intervene early, as you can see here, such a opaque looking vitreous. But once we identify the plane, the rest of the surgery becomes quite easy. And key is also to give, appropriate intraocular antibiotics. Don't manage this patient just with doing a surgery alone, and follow them up quite closely. Over a period of time, we have salvaged many eyes now, but the plan of action has to be quite well elaborated. And what you see here, again, a patient with a traumatic endophthalmitis. When we try to induce a posterior vitreous detachment, it has to be done at multiple plane with very low suction, because all these traumatic eyes are also more prone for inflammation, and also forehead is quite inflamed. So once you achieve all these things, you have a correct plan, you can get a good anatomical and functional outcome. So just to summarize, traumatic endophthalmitis at any cost has to be ruled out before management and has to be managed appropriately. There are a lot of areas of controversy. Let's not go into the detail, the right role of vitrectomy, timing, and also all. But early intervention is the key with proper consent. And also when there is a presence of retinal detachment or intraocular foreign body, don't hesitate to intervene early. The management doesn't stop there. As I said, your initial management is just the start. Surgical management is again just a start. Always try to look out for sympathetic ophthalmitis. Over a period of time, follow these patients quite closely, and this has to be managed quite appropriately. Has been quite aptly highlighted by Rupesh and Jyotirmay Biswas sir, that we manage these patients and follow these patients for sympathetic ophthalmia in to a very great extent. Prevention, we are all talking about, is the key, and avoidance of medical legal cases for your practice as well. Plan. And as we are here now on Upwards platform, we are going to get a new trauma score, which has to be, familiar with all of us, not only the, ocular trauma scores. Patient has to be well anesthetized. Visualization is a key. Management of infection has to be dealt appropriately. And we have many good options nowadays in surgical front, like MIVS surgeries, it is microincision vitrectomy surgeries. But the treatment doesn't stop there. Management of PVR is very challenging in this eyes, and treatment of our complications is one, but the surgeon also has to have that attitude that never ever give up. Thank you so very much for patient hearing.
Wonderful. Fantastic talk, Manoj and Mehul. Both of you covered both anterior and posterior segment. And I think one thing which very clearly Manoj says is that don't give up attitude, because even from no PL, we have had patients who have got 3/60 or even 6/60 in rupture globe cases. So this, I think, probably the only indication in your eye surgery wherein you can operate on a no PL. And we have seen it right in front of us. And Manoj, before we go on to the panel discussion quickly, I just want to, open globe injury, how do you assess the posterior segment? You cannot do a B scan, obviously. Very difficult to do a B scan in these patients.
Yeah, so better to suture the wounds are at the primary outset itself. So once you suture the wound, you get a fair idea what is the extent of damage to the iris or the intraocular lens, and then take a call. So, or otherwise there are other indicators as well, like the extent limbal injury, whether the tear is extending posteriorly. In rare situations, or most often or not, when we wanted to know the posterior segment pathology quite well, we close the eyelids in a sterile way and we do a very gentle B scan. So it's not that the B scan cannot be done, but it has to be really very gentle. So that can be done. And the last thing is a CT scan as well.
Absolutely. See, Rupesh.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think we open up for the panel. So I think Dr. Ganga, I'm sure you must have some thoughts about the orbital, lid, and adnexal trauma, which we could not cover in this session. But probably you would like to say why it is important to watch out for just the lid, adnexal, orbital trauma in the context of the globe trauma as such, and your thought process about the ophthalmic trauma rather than ocular trauma. Dr. Ganga.
Now, great talk, Manoj and Mehul, of course, and of course preceded by others, including Christy. And I think one of the slides in Dr. Christy's talk was talking about the team approach. That's why I think Rupesh is trying to drive home the message. It's not the anterior segment, the posterior segment surgeon, but involving that nexal surgeon. And of course, if that nexal structures are not taken care of, any repair of the globe injury that you do is usually flawed because the eye has significant ectropion, lagophthalmos, exposure keratopathy, resulting in an infection and resulting in multiple other surgeries as well. And that's where, again, you go one step further, not just working with an oculoplastic surgeon, but facial trauma surgeon. And we ophthalmologists should be part of multidisciplinary head and neck trauma teams. Even if you're a standalone eye hospitals, build a relationship with head and neck surgeons who will either visit your institution or make sure your ophthalmology colleagues, your residents and the postgraduates are visiting consultants at the multi-specialty trauma hospitals. That's the message I want to get across.
Thank you, Dr. Ganga. Yeah, very, very important points. Dr. Ramakrishna, sir, from your experience, anything we would have missed out in anterior, posterior segment injury, and very briefly spoken about the lead adnexal injury. Anything you would like to particularly mention to our young ophthalmologists who are listening to this talk and they should be focusing on while they manage and evaluate these patients with the fireworks eye injuries?
Yeah,
particularly the clinical aspects.
Okay, thank you, Rupesh, and thanks, Dr. Manoj, for a nice talk. And of course, the apart from anterior segment and posterior segment injuries, the orbital injuries and the lid injuries are also as one of the important things. Most of the time, no, when the injury is involves the many there's parts of the eye, including the anterior and posterior. You cannot have a simple anterior segment, or you cannot distinct sometimes. So they can have a various involvement in starting from cornea to the optic nerve. And also we have seen most of the time, especially with the injury with that bomb, atom bomb, they used to say in our place, they used to have close to a rupture globe, and also even we have seen a blood fracture also. Sometimes it's not uncommon to see a blunt injury with rupture globe and blood fracture, or occult rupture of the sclera and posterior dislocation of the lens, and it's a multi thing getting involved. One question to Manoj: suppose if you have involvement of cornea and corneal tear and which is hemorrhage and cataract, will you do in with which is hemorrhage? Will you do in a staged manner, or you will go one by one? That's what because there's a different school of thought, no.
So
Normally
yeah, please go ahead, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Corneal
sir,
tear
please
with detachment, sir. You're asking about corneal tear with an RD. Yeah.
I
think what we are doing is two-stage surgeries.
Oh,
First,
okay.
manage the entry segment, wait for 2 weeks, and then second surgery.
Okay, that's good. Mm-hmm.
Okay, just to kind of, before we give it to Dr. Mohan Rajan to conclude this session, there's some points I wanted to add. I think when we manage some of these patients with the eye trauma, and particularly let's say traumatic cataract, and we have to be giving them a guarded visual prognosis because some of these patients can have concomitant retinal injuries also, particularly in the context of like macular hole. And we have seen that they might have traumatic cataract along with the chorioretinal rupture, traumatic cataract with macular hole. And I'm sure all of you would have seen that. And then it will be a big surprise after doing a good phaco or good IOL and all. Next day, the vision is still 660 or even lesser than that. And that is where you can encounter problems. So there are many things related to coming to the fireworks injury. And I'm sure this will eat up all your evening if we continue to talk about it. But I think each case is new by itself. Each case has to be dealt in its own merit. There are a lot of pearls, and please continue to remember your basics and deal with all these cases, thinking that these are all virgin eyes. I always call this as a virgin eyes, and put in your best, get your best surgeon on the board, and make sure that these eyes have been given full justice. Don't let your junior most surgeon, who has very little experience in managing these cases and he is operating, because these people, they struggle with the cataracts also, and they will struggle like anything for this otherwise very healthy eyes. If you have to give yourself a best shot, and these are very young people, and you're not dealing with one person, you're dealing with an entire family. So this is the bread earner of the family, and if you screw up his eyes, you are going to kind of probably affect his entire family and probably the society and the community and socioeconomic impact to the country also. I think you have a huge responsibility towards your country. Over to you, Dr. Mohan Rajan.
Absolutely. I think it's a golden message, Rupesh, because many centers, they allow the junior most residents or whoever it is to handle these trauma cases because they are available round the clock for the emergency and they take care of the primary work. The problem is the primary, all the secondary, everything, the tertiary care, everything depends on how you handle the primary. Okay, if you screw up the primary, then the secondary and the tertiary care of this particular eye gets screwed up as well. So I think it's a very important message. Senior most surgeon in that center has to handle these trauma cases. Okay, that is the way I think this is a very important message for all of us. We should all make sure, because it's a responsibility towards the patients. These are all young patients, as you rightly said, virgin eyes as well. So I think we have had a fantastic discussion, and let's. I would like Gangadhar or Rupesh or Ramakrishnan, one of the panelists, to sum up the whole thing.
Give this to Dr. Ganga, sir, to probably kind of come up and all how did we do.
Is Venkatesh there? Venkatesh has come.
In fact, I want to hear from Dr. Venkatesh. He's the innovations man of Aravind, I think, if I'm right, and he's a distinguished invitee for our 36th anniversary symposium in January 2022. I would like to hear from Dr. Venkatesh to wrap up and summarize on some take-home points.
Venkatesh, is he there?
I think he's not there.
He's not there.
He's not, yeah.
Ganga, I would like you to do it.
Well, first of all, compliments to the organizers. I think TNOA, President Mohan Rajan, incoming president, the vice president, and the entire organizing team for making this happen. The brain has been Dr. Rupesh Agarwal, who's been the energy and drive behind a lot of our educational initiatives and research collaborations as well. But most importantly, each one of the speakers did great justice to the topic that was given to them. Apart from the clinical and scientific and educational event, what it has opened up to us is how much more work we have to do. We are not just satisfied at managing a trauma case, but we are actually working towards preventing them and eliminating them, probably striking a public and private partnership for awareness, prevention, public display of fireworks, where I think industry can do these fireworks and we can sit and watch and enjoy these fireworks without blinding and disfiguring facial injuries. Put religion and culture aside and try to work with governments, policymakers, public. There was a webinar a couple of weeks ago at Kozhikode where they even have made an educational informative video which they are circulating to schools, colleges, universities, industrial work sites to reduce occupational injuries. So likewise, we can prepare these videos which can be showcased through social media, through television networks, through the WhatsApp groups, so that, and eventually we should have a brand ambassador. I think Dr. Mohan is working towards it. There are several other brand ambassadors who are available, who are willing to help us. And probably in the future, some of these meetings can include speeches by one or two victims of eye injury who have suffered blinding consequences or disfiguring consequences, to give a 5-minute perspective on how it has changed their life. And that alone will be an eye-opener, especially when you're doing these public forums. But I'd like to thank every one of you, and over back to you, Dr. Mohan Rajan.
Thank you, Gangadhar. I think it's all wonderful pearls you have given. And in a nutshell, you have given the entire the webinar and very good take-home messages as well. And we are coming to the end of this wonderful webinar. Really very, very useful, very informative. I learned a lot personally, and I'm sure everybody and all the delegates who are watching on the YouTube and the Facebook as well. And I would request our dynamic secretary of Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association, Dr. V. Madhavan from Erode, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, dear President. I think the idea, the seed for today's meeting started on the day of World Sight Day, when talking about the advocacy for crackers during Diwali. And in such a short time, our dynamic president could come up with this webinar. And we had the great privilege and to have such distinguished panelists and speakers on this occasion. And I'm sure our members, both in Facebook and in YouTube, would have greatly benefited from today's masterclass, rather. And in this short time, we could come up with educational material also in all 4 different languages, thanks to Dr. Ramakrishnan sir and Aravind Hospital. And I am sure these advocacy measures, legislation, and preventive aspects will go a long way in preventing trauma due to cracker injuries. And in this, I would sincerely thank the wonderful panelists and the speakers for making this event a very, very memorable one for all TNOA members. And I would like to thank Sensus Pharma and Numerotech for their wonderful backup and association. And even though today's meeting is over, please do join us at 11 o'clock tomorrow when we have Pediatric Update Connect series. And I'm sure TNOA never sleeps. TNOA keeps shining under the dynamic leadership of our energetic and very charming President, Dr. Mohan Rajan. Thank you. Thank you for your kind presence.
Thank you, Madhavan. I think it's a teamwork which is making us everything happen in TNOA. Tomorrow, 11 o'clock IST, 11 a.m. Stay tuned for the Pediatric Ophthalmology Update in association with Shankar Nethralaya. It's a TNOA Connect series which happens every last Sunday of every month. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, Sai.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Thank you, Sai.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
night.
great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.